Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover anything and everything to do with the Marvel Universe. From the comics, TV, and movies, we will go from Earth 616 to the Mojoverse to the TVA in order to bring the Marvel Universe right to you. I'm the man without fear, Chris.
I'm your friendly neighborhood Brent.
I'm Sugar Bear.
Okay.
Oh, not. All right. Alliance,
Assemble.
assemble. I
didn't
explain
expect
yourself. Explain yourself.
X-Force. X-Force. Sugar Bear.
Yeah.
All
No.
right.
He's in Deadpool 3.
Yeah. No. Okay. All right. I just didn't expect it.
I can't support Magneto right at this moment. We'll get into why later.
All right. Well, as you see, volume 214. Travis, you have returned after a short little family break that you had.
Let's be honest. I completely fell asleep waiting for this episode as the time difference got me. I fell asleep. I woke up when you guys were doing the comic part of this episode. I did text you and tell you that I was fading, and I don't know if I was going to make the episode because it was a long week. This week, tomorrow's my day off, so let's ride on the X-Men.
There we go. How about your week, Brent? How's it been?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. There's some news in the news section of this, and I discovered that news when I looked at the show notes. So I was like, oh, did not see this. Okay, glad I looked at it earlier. To, just a double check, make sure nothing's changed since the last time I had looked at it. But I completely missed this news entirely. So I'm like, all right, here we are. It's been a week.
Well, Brent and I usually text each other a few times during the day at that point. I sent him a text this morning, and it only got answered 5 minutes ago. So I knew Brent had a long day.
I'm a little ashamed. It's a little over 12 hours it took me to reply to it. And that's, I would like to, I apologize.
Yes, it's all good. But yeah, this week, my goal for this upcoming week was I had a very work-filled weekend. I had a lot of stuff to do in preparation for this week I'm currently in. And I said, I am not having a repeat of that. So I've had a very front-load heavy getting ready, literally working for the weekend to make sure I could actually enjoy and have a break this weekend. So I mission accomplished. I am there.
Nice.
So, but all right, yes, we have the penultimate episode of X-Men 97, Tolerance is Extinction, Part 2 discussed. I mean, I know we're going to have to do the non-spoiler thing first, and we're all going to rush through that because we all want to talk everything about what's going on with this, because some serious stuff happened, and I'm still so happy that this story arc has finally gotten a place in X-Men animation. Oh, so happy. But all right, let us go through all the lovely network plugs. We are part of the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network with 7 shows covering the wide range of geek and nerdom. To see the full schedule, check out the show notes below and subscribe to the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at GUAPod Network so you know when all the shows drop. We also have a Patreon, so if you want to throw a couple of shekels our way, we've got 2 tiers. We got our $1 tier as our tip jar to say, hey, you think we're doing a good job? And then we've got our $5 tier with ad-free episodes, early access episodes, and Patreon-exclusive shows. We've got 2 shows on it for Marvel Alliance. We can watch this all day. The Marvel Alliance Infinity Saga Rewatch, 24 episodes covering the chronological order of reviews that Brent and I did for the Infinity Saga. And we are currently now on our newest show, Tales from the House of X. We are watching our favorite movies from the Fox era of X-Men. 2 episodes are up there right now, Deadpool, Deadpool 2. And on Monday night, Brent and I are recording episode 3, which is covering what?
The Wolverine. Normally, I've done my homework by now. I have not this time. I've got it slotted in to watch this weekend. I'm looking forward to it.
Too.
I have not seen that one in a very long time, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, it has been a good long time, so that is also my weekend homework. I've already got my notes set up for it, so I can just sit back and enjoy watching it this weekend. Friend of the show, listener of the show, Josh Green had messaged me in preparation for the Patreon episode asking about what is any required reading based off of. I told him very simply, the Claremont Miller 4-issue miniseries. It is loosely based on that short miniseries. So if you want to do that, Yeah, it will. But it will drop at the end of this month, so you got a couple more weeks to wait for that. And DC Alliance, you guys got the DC films through the years. What is next up for you all?
A History of Violence, which I've never watched before, so that's another one that I'm interested in, just like V
Very
for
good.
Vendetta, because those are some highly, critically acclaimed movies, and well, for V for Vendetta, it didn't land
Have
with
you
me.
watched it yet? Have you watched it?
No, not yet, not yet. I
Okay.
plan to do it this weekend.
Definitely, there are a few scenes in there. Two scenes in there that should be very much. Curious to see how you react to it.
I'll let you know for sure. And the
You'll know
patrons
what
as
I'm
well.
talking about when you get to it.
Definitely.
We've got your co-host Joe doing his Disney dives on the 1st and the 15th of every month. He is dropping a look at the Disney animated films through the years. So he just did The Reluctant Dragon. I'm not sure what's coming up next for him, but that was an interesting one. I didn't know about that film existing, so very good. Always interested to do that. We also have a lot of back content out there, so we want to thank our patrons. We can't do this without your support, but if you're not a member of our Patreon, go to www.patreon.com/DGWay Network to get all the amazing stuff that we got there. And then if you can't join us on Patreon, totally understand, but if you want to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts, we greatly appreciate it. And last but certainly not least, we want to thank our official sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com, for your omnibus hardcover collected edition needs. JP and the crew at OPB have got it going on with excellent customer service, immaculate packaging, ships around the world. Lots of fun omnis on there. New ones, X-Men Decimation, first time ever in print. Here's a fun one, X-Men Road to Onslaught Omnibus Volume 1, first time ever going into print. Hints of the future, gentlemen. The Death of Wolverine. Also, man, all these are tying into very interesting things that are going on. So lots of different things. Use that code MARVELGUA at checkout to get $2 off every single order. Use it a limited amount of times. It lets them know you're a listener. We want to thank them for being our official sponsor. All right, gentlemen. So Tolerance's Extinction, Part 2, Episode 9, the penultimate episode of the X-Men 97 Return to Form series. Non-spoiler thoughts. Just whoever wants to go first, go.
This was another absolutely great episode. If you wanted me to rank it with last week's, I'd say maybe it's not. Maybe last week's was like a notch above it for me, but that's not really a criticism of this week's so much as it is how great that one was. I did have one thing that kind of felt a little anticlimactic for me in this episode, believe it or not, but there was other things that were the definition of, the climactic moment. And so on the whole, great episode, so much in it that I really enjoyed seeing. And there's not a lot I feel like I can say without diving into spoilers, so I'm going to leave it there.
I'm right there with Brent. This episode was fantastic. I really loved it. The animation really lends itself to the fight scenes as well compared to the old X-Men show. I love this. I'm absolutely shocked at each week at how good it is. Like, I'm continually shocked. I expect there to be a lull, and there never is. Last week to this week, and now I'm fairly confident that this is going to be the best season of animated television that I've ever watched. I'm confident they're going to stick the landing. So I think I can say that. And just so much speculation that comes out of this, not even for what happens next episode, but what can happen next season too. So I'm interested to get into discussions with you guys.
Yeah, it kind of seeing the writing on the wall, and then even when we started our breakdown at that point, as soon as I heard who was doing the previously on, I was like,
Yeah.
I said, oh, dang it.
Yep.
Never ends
I'm
well
so
for that
happy,
person.
but I'm so scared right now. As soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, we're doing it. We're going there. This has been something, I've been kind of hoping for. We've danced around it. Mr. Snell talked about it last week in one of his questions to us. Friend of the show, your squad cast mate, Scott McClellan he and I had gone back and forth about the hopes and dreams of this finally coming into fruition.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah.
it is not my It is not my favorite episode of the season. It is definitely top 3 for sure. It is one of those where the episode 5 still just ranks the best of the season right now at that point. But man, the amount of setup and the amount of callbacks and everything just kind of coming to a head at that point. And this, I mean, I've said it before. The MCU, for the most standing job with penultimate episodes, but however, it's those finales that seem to be, it doesn't quite live up. But Bo DeMeo has been saying that you hold my beer basically for the final episode. So he's been pretty true to form with what he, obviously the writer of the show, he knows what's coming, but he hasn't necessarily misled the fans through his tweets at that point. So I'm going to tend to say like, all right, I'm willing to believe you this time. I'm willing to trust you with my heart. So
Do you think we get a post-credit scene after the end of the episode next week? That's something because there hasn't been any yet. So I'm really interested to hear your guys'
I don't
thoughts
need
on that.
one, and I'll be okay if there's not. I'll be completely fine if there is one. Great, but I don't need. I'll be fine with that one.
I mean, I'll certainly check for one, but I don't know.
I do after every episode, so I can't help it.
Oh yeah, no. Every single episode you check, but I guess if I had to bet on it, I would say no, which is maybe weird because it's what Marvel Studios does, but it's different. So I'm gonna vote no, or not voting. I'm gonna guess no. I'm fine either way. I mean, I'd be excited to see what they would tease.
I think it depends on how the episode ends. Like if you want to set up something for next season, perhaps, but. I'm there with you guys. Just I don't think it'll be it would be something you might have did after episode 5, but no.
Mm-hmm. But all right, well, let us take down the spoiler wall. Take our first ad break before we get into all the spoilers of X-Men 97, Episode 9, Tolerance's Extinction, Part 2. So if you have not seen that episode yet, pause, watch it. You need to watch it. Watch it. Mm-hmm. You're not going to appreciate us breaking it down in the same way. So. But as you know, listeners, these ads help keep the lights on the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on, know how many times the same ad repeats over and over and over again. So turn that volume down before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. All right. So as I kind of hinted towards, intro changes, as we always seem to always start off with. So Wolverine does previously on X-Men. And like I said, at that moment, I was like, all right, here we go. I'm ready for my heart to be broken, but I'm also ready for my geek heart to say, oh, it's finally happening.
Yeah, I mean, that happens. We pretty much know how the episode is going to end. And, oh, look at that. We were right. But we'll get there.
But the interesting thing is that every single episode has had a focal point. Like whoever is like doing the previous one has been a focal point, or that is kind of their quote unquote, that is their episode. And so it's been really nice to kind of see characters outside of really like 2 characters have really gotten a spotlight. That would be Morph and Beast. And yet again, Beast is left to the background and as is Morph.
Yeah, Beast had a couple great moments in this particular episode. Morph had a great moment, but neither of them have had a good like episode focus the way some of the others have.
Morph essentially has been used for Marvel Easter egg cameos more than anything else. And I'm going to be honest with you, I've enjoyed it. I hope they do go more with this story in next season. But Bo DeMeo did say this as well. Like, not everyone would get a focus. And Wolverine was at the back burner for most of this season as well until this episode here. Yeah. And he's not even at the forefront of this episode. It's only the final little bit there that is comic accurate, like iconic. Well, not final little bit, but
and pretty much all the stuff is the same except at the very end when you get the heroes and villains running at each other, the people have now changed into Prime Sentinels. So blink and you miss it. So very nice touch there. So we start off with Professor Xavier waking up to see his wheelchair behind him, and he can no longer walk because, again, he doesn't have that Shi'ar armor tech. And it was rather interesting. He says, you know what, I'm just going to sleep in the does reasons.
Why would you sleep, though? Wouldn't you just try to assemble the team? Like, wouldn't you be like, I can't even sleep now? Like, I need to assemble the team. I just, like, flew across space. Like,
really, that's one of the...
maybe space jet lag.
That's one of my criticisms of the episode. The last one ends on that great "to me, my X-Men" moment, and we don't see their reactions, any of their reactions at all, to Professor Xavier's return. And
I expected hugs, Brett. I expected hugs,
or hugs, or yelling, or whatever, something, just some sort of reaction, and we didn't get to see that. And I felt like we I don't know. Ode isn't the right word, but I felt like it would have been, give us another minute, and it would have been nice.
I don't know if that's a popular statement, David.
Yeah, David
Yeah.
says Charles doesn't care. Cyclops was right. We'll talk about whether or not Cyclops was right this week.
Absolutely wrong. So we get then a shot of Magneto looking out of the ocean with a ton of cargo ships that have stopped because what he did with stopping the magnet reversing and changing the magnetic poles in the last episode. We get Bastion walking through his hometown, overrun by Prime Sentinels, carrying his mom's deactivated body, crying because he views this as a sacrifice he had to make. It's just a really kind of creepy scene all around with all the people frozen, the horror on their faces of realizing what's become of them. They could have thought it was a way to he really probably looks at this as he was trying to do it to upgrade her so that she could live forever and mutants couldn't harm her. Well, that didn't work out. Now, I want to put out a theory. Do you think that Bastion wanted Magneto to get loose in order to further increase the divide between humans and mutants?
1000%. I don't think he leaves him that's what I wanted to say. I wish I was on that last episode. I don't think that he leaves him that vulnerable to be able to be let out unless he
Yeah.
wants to. That's the only reason, because he's been so far ahead of the X-Men this whole time. And then to just let Magneto leave, unbeknownst, I think there's a couple of possibilities. Magneto could possibly turn into a Prime Sentinel, or somebody else, or we'll get to it. I think the season 2 villain could come from this letting Magneto leave. Not only the whole mutant human relations, but I think after this next episode, we'll get a potential season 2 villain come out of this as well.
I could see the argument for it. And I mean, there's even evidence I would argue for it. It's just like he left Val Cooper there. Like, there's no reason she needed to be there. There's no reason. I mean, you could say it was his arrogance. He thought she wasn't a threat. But at the same time, look at the position he's in now. I don't buy that that's what he wanted to happen. Now, he maybe didn't think Magneto was going to go that far. Maybe he didn't think Magneto was that powerful. He underestimated. It's an interesting question that you pose. I don't have a great answer for it, but it's an interesting question.
Yeah, it's one of the ones I was just kind of thinking about just because, he has been basically playing 4-dimensional chess with everything. This is something he's been working towards, even in the scenes that, just retconning him into the original series at that point. This has been a long plan for him to move forward with.
Not only that, Chris, one other thing, he's been behind the scenes in every episode. I mean, you're not going to be literally behind the scenes pulling the strings and then just leave Magneto to be freed by some random person, like UN person. I just don't see that happening. I think there is a plan behind this.
Yeah. There's definitely a plan. So we then move to Jubilee and Roberto, who have now escaped Prime Sentinel custody, being chased down the alley by a mob, much like how we saw both of them in the intros of the respective series, being chased down. It's not just the Friends of Humanity anymore. Regular people are now feeling the hate towards mutants. We see Professor X rub the dirt off and see his old power chair basically destroyed, symbolizing he's now seeing the consequences of his actions that he put in motion. Back to Roberto and Jubilee, we see the lightning flash and Storm appears with Forge with his, basically his power leg, also turning into a small jet engine as well.
Power leg
at that point. Yep, I'm going to call it power leg. And they're able to save them. And Forge is back in his original X Factor uniform, so that we'd seen him in the first time in the future, and then also in the X Factor episode where we saw him in the present day.
I have a question about Forge, but I'm going to save it for just a little bit in the future, just when he's.
So then we see Magneto then start reassembling.
Can I say one thing real quick?
Yeah.
That moment where Storm comes in, that's the moment that I felt like was anticlimactic. Like her rejoining the X-Men, and it's like, that was it. She just beat up a bunch of humans. Like, or not even beat them up, but stopped them. Like, all right, I guess.
The reactions to the X-Men reuniting, I thought would be a lot more as they're talking about their family. Right? I thought the same thing a couple times there. It was a little anticlimactic, like Professor X in the start and now Storm.
Yeah, it's almost like, where you been? Come on. It took you that long to get back into this action. So we see Magneto then start reassembling Asteroid M from the ocean. We remember it did crash down. I don't know if this is the same place it crashed down or he's just assembling rocks to build his new Asteroid M. Maybe a little bit of both. So we then head back to Bastion, who, with him seeing the tears in his mother's face, showing the agony that she had gone through. We also see the picture that we talked about in the last episode, entitled "The Final Dream" that he painted as a child, signaling that the future is very much in motion and this is very much quickly becoming a reality. Then we keep on getting flashed, so we then flash over back to the mansion, and we see Cyclops basically dressing down Professor Xavier for his decision to leave Magneto in charge. Now remember, Cyclops had started warming up to Magneto kind of being the new kind of leader at that point. Now that everything's gone to hell in a handbasket, he's not very happy with Professor X, and he said that he left it to Magneto because he wanted to let Jean and him have an opportunity to leave and live their life, because he knew Cyclops would not do it unless forced to, but fate would always pull him back in. Now, I'm sorry. This, even though, yes, this calls back what Madeline said back in episode 1 at that point, that maybe this was the reason he did this. I more expected Professor X to say one of the two things: that he put Magneto in charge because he saw good in him, or that he wanted to end the cycle of conflict between them. But this reason, I'm sorry, is just lame.
I'm not gonna lie, because Professor Xavier he's a shady guy, right? Like with Magneto, you at least know what you're getting. Like Xavier is a shady guy, and after this, I half wondered, did he plant the idea into Madeline's head to push? It's certainly not.
That's a reach.
Is it a reach for him, Xavier, to plant the idea?
I think you're stretching comic Xavier with this X-Men the animated series run Xavier. I can't remember anything too crazy.
There's some fairness there, but these shows are very comic accurate and pull heavily from them. But you're right, that's a fair comment. That said, regardless, it's Cyclops was right in that he was always going to be pulled back in. Like it's not in his nature not to help people. So if there was a conflict, he's going to be pulled back in. Like it's just always going to happen. It was never going to work. And I didn't buy Xavier's whole, that's what I wanted for me too. I wanted to have a life or whatever. I'm like, I don't know if I buy that either. But because the whole reason he left was because he almost died. And so I'm like, you didn't leave because you were trying to have a normal life. You left because you got shot. There's a big difference, and you needed Shi'ar Tech to save you.
He essentially stayed for that, Brent. He stayed for a normal life.
Maybe. Xavier, I don't know. He's a shady guy.
I'm not a fan of that either, Chris. I thought it was really weak. It's probably one of the weakest things I've seen in this show in this season. Because, like you said, he could have said, I saw good Magneto. I wanted to end fighting between the two of you guys, like the two teams, anything like that. But no, it was, I want you guys to go away. Okay, what happens if Magneto turned evil? You wouldn't want the two most powerful, seasoned, veteran people on the team to be there to try to stop him? Like, no, that did not make any sense to me.
Yeah. So then Rogue wakes up from her 2-day coma, and Nightcrawler's there and telling her that Trask did survive, and someone else also survived as well. And her first words are, Remy, and that just is heartbreaking. So,
yep.
Storm, Forge, and Jubilee and Roberto come back to the mansion, literally knock down the door, and Jean and Storm have a very warm embrace. So, they've really made it a point to show how close they are. Even my recent rewatch of X-Men the Animated Series, they were close, but I never got the impression that they were this close. Like it's good that they're doing this. I think it makes it's comic accurate in that way, but they're really kind of honing in on that one, particularly in X-Men 97.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It felt more like it was Storm and Rogue in X-Men the Animated Series that were going off on most of the things together, going shopping together, stuff like that. And here, in a little bit, they have one of the best moments of the season, and I can't wait to talk about it.
So Jean tells them that they are getting ready to relocate to the Muir Island base that has the Shi'ar tech that they can utilize that is still operational. Because Moira and Banshee are not using it because they've been vaporized.
They're gone.
They vaporized. So Professor Xavier then splits the teams into the classic Claremont era, Jim Lee era teams, blue and gold.
Love that they did this. Love that they did this.
Yes. The blue team is going to take on Magneto to try to reverse the damage he's done to the magnetic poles before it ends life on Earth, and the gold team is tasked with taking down Bastion. Sunspot is also in his comic accurate New Mutants costume because, why not? He's, kind of putting one foot in, one foot out of joining in, but yes, very comic accurate. We also see Rogue wearing her original kind of quote, her villain costume where she was originally there, but she's also wearing Remy's jacket.
Nice touch there.
Yeah, very, very nice touch as well. We do learn some very interesting history that I was not expecting, that Professor Xavier did try to recruit a young Bastion in the past because Cerebro had pinpointed him that he was a mutant. He was a mutant, a technopath at that point. And so when he did try to go over there and explain to his mother that Bastion was a mutant, she basically slammed the door in his face. And what a technopath is, for those that don't know, they have the ability to interact with all machines. So they can kind of manipulate and cause all machines. So obviously not true because of what we know what Bastion is a merging of Master Mold and Nimrod.
Question for you guys. Do you think that's a possibility that they could go back in time and change that to recruit him on the team?
I mean,
they could, but I don't think they will.
You could argue, at least in this continuity, he is a mutant because of the way he was born, where the Sentinels basically infected his parents. But regardless of that, yeah, I think it is. Cable's still around. While Cable is around, time travel is a possibility. So, yes, I absolutely think time travel is on the table still.
Yeah. We see Forge and Beast working on what might end up being a permanent neuralizer collar for Bastion to sever his connections to the Prime Sentinels permanently. But when they kind of explain to Storm what they're doing, kind of has a huge thunder sound that she does not approve.
She made it known real quick that was unacceptable, and I got a little chuckle out of that. I won't lie.
I chuckled as well, and this is where I want to ask the question about Forge now.
Okay.
Why doesn't he remember Bastion, or why hasn't he spoken about remembering Bastion? Because he's in that picture, the arm shovel with I can't remember the doctor's name, Adler and Bastion. Yeah. So why hasn't he said anything yet? Does he not remember?
I think he does. I think he just doesn't want to make them question his motives right now because he saw what happened with Storm.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a definitely a plausible explanation.
Beast does say that it will take years to remove the nanotech from the Prime Sentinels, but they could possibly restore their humanity faster. Professor X does have this opportunity to talk with Rogue outside, saying that Remy should have been buried at the school instead of the bayou because because Professor X pretty much sees his past as being criminal, but his time at the school as being a noble time. So I think that was pretty rude of him to say, because Rogue has a great comment back saying she takes offense to this because she loved all aspects of Remy, and she didn't just see him as an X-Men, she saw him as her man. He was the most Cajun he'd ever been, and she makes this kind of punch back to him, saying maybe if you saw us as people and not just students or soldiers.
That was so stupid, Chris. When he said that, I was just like, what? Like read the room, fella. Like you were gone when this happened. Like maybe take a step back here. Like what a terrible thing to say instead of my condolences, Rogue. Gave it passing.
Yeah, no. Again, Xavier he's a good guy in the sense of he's on the side of the good guys. Mm-hmm. But he's shady. I'm telling you.
I'm on Team Brent. I'm on Team Brent.
He's just not. He's a good guy. He's not a nice person, right?
No,
he lacks some basic social skills there. Like you said, read the room, right? It's for a guy who can read minds, he can't read the room.
Yeah, heart's in the right place, can't say the right thing. Then at that moment, Magneto then descends from outer space with the new asteroid M to do what he's done like in the previous series, offer mutants a new haven before Earth gets permanently screwed up. He talks about basically referencing his last, what he promised Leech, and that Leech's death affected him and won't allow it to happen again. And he says tolerance of extinction, and saying Xavier's dream is dead. Like, there is no coming back. And I brought it out last week in Fact or Fiction. Magneto was going to go full, really lean hard on villain, and this was going to be rough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I guess you can take that one off as a fact.
Yeah. So this is probably one of my favorite moments of it, when Magneto puts it out there and Rogue steps forward to join Magneto, saying she is done trying. She's seen so many people die. Genosha has basically radicalized her. She says, in Genosha, I made a choice to lead our kind to a new age. I stand by that choice. And Storm said, Rogue, do not turn your back on family. And then Rogue just really claps back hard on like everyone. You were gone, gal. None of you were there the day Genosha fell. Who dies next, Professor? Jean? Been there, done that. Who knows where Bishop is? And hell, Morph was barely on the team 30 minutes before we tossed them to the wolves. And I like the proper pronouns. She used the proper thing, calling Morph them. That was good.
I like the 30 minutes because it was the end of the first episode.
Yes.
It's like it just felt like a little meta joke there.
Yep. Jubilee, Roberto, I will not see any more mutants die. Bravo, Rogue. She has that was a very impressive writing for her to say stuff like that. Mm-hmm. That is a top-notch character development there. Even though I hate that she turned, this is homaging in that, when Bo DeMeo's put out that issue, in the comics, it is spoilers for you if you have never read Fatal Attraction at that point. It is Colossus that betrays the team because at the time when Magneto arrives, it is the funeral for his sister Ileana, who had died from the legacy virus.
Yeah, I read that the other night, and I remembered it being Colossus, but I couldn't remember the specifics of why. And I'm like, okay, yeah, like it's all coming back. And it was like, it made me wish Colossus was here, but it also made the most sense for it to be Rogue. Like, we basically, you, Chris, you, me, and Snell talked the other day briefly about, we all kind of agreed on the same two likely candidates, with Rogue being the most one to be the traitor. I did not expect Roberto to go as well, but he's just kind of there, and that's kind of
his reason makes sense, just because he says Mother basically turned him over to Prime Sentinels without a second thought. I do like how when she does, right before she joins Magneto, she lays Remy's jacket on Professor X's chair, basically signaling that she has moved on. She is, in the sense of, she is done grieving. She is now angry and going to basically take her revenge.
She's going to keep the emotions that she had before the Prime Sentinel knocked her out. Like, she's not messing around anymore. It's sad, like you said, Chris, but it does make sense.
Now, do you all think, I've seen this said a couple of times, and it's hard for me to disprove it yet, but I've seen a number of people propose that maybe when she absorbed, some of Trask at that point, that this is basically some of Trask affecting her and kind of pushing her more in the kind of villain direction more so than not. That the Rogue does maintain and has a comic history of maintaining the emotions and memories of those that she does absorb. So could this possibly be affecting her judgment?
If she woke up and was different, yes, I agree with you. But no, she's the same way now. I remember in the X-Men original animated series, she would absorb those things. It was longer for mutants than it was for humans, and she would eventually get rid of those memories. It wouldn't take that long. So again, I don't think that that's the reason at all here. I think that if she woke up different from the little mini coma, then I would agree with you. If she woke up back the same way she was before killing Trask, but no, she's totally radicalized because of the events of Genosha. I think that's part of what Bo's trying to show here.
You think there's any chance she's a Prime Sentinel?
I do think that, Brent. I do think there's a chance
really?
of that. Yeah,
Hmm.
I think
I don't know if
there's
I'm
going
ready
to
to
be
go.
one
I'm not
way.
ready to go that far yet.
There might be one way to save her at the end of this season, and only one person to do it.
I just wonder because of
Activate
her
stuff.
the experience with Gyrick and that when it was what was her name? Trish Tilby basically made the ask like, would the sleeper agents even know? Would they even have a clue? And immediately she changes after that. And the implication there was the answer is no. They would not know that they were. So the thought crossed my mind. I'm
Right.
not ready to jump to the conclusion, but I am ready to ask the question.
To go with your thing, when she touched Skyrick, when she woke up, she was in an alley, and that's where Kurt found her. So who's to say they didn't do that experiment with her? Like Basson said, they'll wake up with no knowledge of it happening.
Yeah, and there's no explanation for how she gets there.
Yeah, like there's no explanation. They don't say like she scrambled out to get here or nothing like that. They just show her in the alley. So I do think you might be onto something there, and we may see that. I don't think that's affecting her actions right now. And again, it doesn't make much sense because he did say like you could be at a bar and a mutant flirts with you, and then it would activate. So why didn't it activate yet? That's the other thing. I'm not.
I mean, if Bastion controls it, if he can set it,
That's true.
if he wants her to be a sleeper agent to, potentially try and get in the good graces. Again, I'm not ready to call it a theory. I'm just throwing out the thought crossed my mind thinking about the episode. So
Yeah, it's not
even if it happens next week, I can't say I called it. I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, I think it's a good question to ask, and it thought had not crossed my mind, but I mean, at this point, yeah, sure, anything's possible. But before we head into kind of the last half of the episode, we're going to take our next ad break. So listeners, these ads help keep the lights on the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on. Can't control the volume. Can't control how many times they repeat. So we're going to give you that 3 count before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. So they all, after Magneto leaves, Roberto and Rogue go with him. Magneto still says the offer is good for anyone that they wish to join. So we head to Muir Island. We get a good shot of a lot of vehicles, planes, and costumes. We get the costumes of Storm from Giant Size X-Men #1, which is basically what she's in right now, maybe a slightly updated one. We get Cyclops in Marvel Girl in their Generation 2 uniforms when they graduated from their original ones. Wolverine in the brown and tan, originally designed by John Byrne. Professor X from the early 90s X-Men comics, and Rogue, which she's basically already in right now. We see the original Blackbird from the comics in 60s cars, but what I loved was seeing the Wolverine bike with the claws from Toy Biz. I owned that as a kid. It was so... I paused and said, am I seeing it? Yes, that is the Wolverine bike with the Wolverine claws on it. Man, what a nice callback.
Yeah, that's fun. I really enjoyed seeing these costumes. The primary costumes they wear in this show is my favorite costumes for all the characters, but I do enjoy the other costumes, and I do have a special fondness for that particular Cyclops costume, mainly because that's the one he was wearing in the Pride of the X-Men cartoon, which I watched so many times. I love that one episode. It's such a banger of an opening song too. But I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not as good as this one, but it was.
Is it the one like X-Men here today?
Yes,
That's
yes,
yes. There you go.
And but like Pride of the X-Men, they had like Wolverine. Wolverine was in the brown and tan. Cyclops was in that costume. Storm was in this. Like those are the era costumes they were using, and Nightcrawler was in that as well. And so it was kind of cool just to see these costumes again.
Don't talk about the Canadian-Australian accent. But no, I love the costumes as well.
Yeah, you want a piece of fruit? Yeah.
But Chris, there's a couple things I noticed there as well. Besides Wolverine's bike from '91, there was Wolverine's motorcycle from Wolverine and the X-Men there as well in the corner. You could circle it. I paused it, and then there was a couple people on Reddit talking about it as well. So I love that series as well. So I thought I know it was a different continuity, but it was a nice little.
No, it works. Yeah, that works too. So Cyclops and Nathan Cable have a father-son chat about him needing to trust Jean despite her not being his mother because she was a part of her too. He tosses him his alternate costume, his like newer comic accurate costume, because the costume he is wearing is comic accurate. That is the original version of Cable, but the costume he does toss to him is the updated costume, and gives him. And Cable says, "Am I going to war or the circus?" Cyclops responds, what were you expecting? Black leather? And yes, we
Yes.
all know
Yes.
that's the callback to the original X-Men movie directed by Bryan Singer, because Bryan Singer had this silly, dumb notion that people were not going to take these characters seriously when they were in their comic accurate. Thank goodness. Absolutely, thank goodness that we are beyond that now in this new age of comic book movies.
I love that they did that joke, though. I love
It was a proper
Oh, yeah,
clapback,
that was great.
Brent. It was It was a proper clapback.
So
23 years later, and they say, "Yes, we want the we want the costumes."
yes,
We always have.
yes, we always did. So we get President Kelly and Professor X having a very heated conversation in the kind of the projections of their minds, with Professor X asking him to hold off attacking Magneto and give them a chance to stop him, since Earth only has now 1 hour left before the magnetic field permanently becomes destabilized. Kelly does this, but he said he will not hesitate to initiate the Magneto protocols if they fail to succeed. He says at that point, his hand will have been forced. Now, again, we must remember, when he was a senator, Senator Kelly was very much anti-mutant at that point, but it was only when he saw that literally Master Mold was getting ready to replace his brain with a robot, with a robot, and all the other leaders. He was like, all right. Then the mutants saved him a number of times, so he was very much pro-mutant, and we already seen him earlier in this season kind of having to toe this line, like, I want to be the mutants' friends, but I've also got all these human beings out there that I've got to represent too. So I love it that it doesn't surprise me that they have what is labeled as the Magneto protocols to let's just be honest, try and more than likely fail to take Magneto down.
I would love to see those enacted here, because it would be such a badass scene.
It the conversation with Kelly, it was like, it's good that they got that in there. You always have that, but I'm just, Xavier is like, trust me, trust my X-Men, as you have so often before. And I like that Kelly was throwing it back in his face. You left your team to a lunatic, right? Like,
what did you think was going to happen?
now, and you could make an argument that this doesn't happen with Magneto if not for Bastion and the attack on because Magneto was
theory.
He was going into it, but he was trying. Magneto was trying. Bastion pushes him this way. But either way, I like Kelly throwing it at Xavier's face that, like, this was your plan, and it all blew up in all of our faces.
I'm going to push back a little bit here, because if not for Professor X almost dying and being sent away, Magneto was going to do a full-on assault war. So obviously leaving the team to him was pretty stupid. But I do think that maybe the alternative was he stays and stews and then attacks Earth anyway. So
potentially, but from President Kelly's perspective,
yeah,
leaving the team to Magneto is not advisable.
Yeah, he didn't know about the potential war either. So,
but it was gonna work. Like, it was working until episode 5. It was working.
It was.
Yeah.
Scott brought coffee and everything.
And again, even in the Krakoa era, Magneto has gone good and has kind of stayed that way during it. We'll kind of see as the Krakoan era officially comes to an end in the next month. We will see what the future holds for the X-Men. But anyways, talk for another day. So we get, during the end of their talk, we get a flash of kind of the team getting prepped for it, going to their respective jet. To start their mission, with everyone in their original suits. With Wolverine, he's donning that brown and tan suit. I am partial. If I have to pick, I am slightly more partial to the yellow and blue, just because that's when I kind of grew up with the Jim Lee and Chris Claremont era. But it's tough. Any day can kind of switch, but man, I just love seeing him in that. We get Nightcrawler clutching his rosaries while Jubilee's looking at Roberto's card, which he burns up. Jean and Scott hug it out that they're still trying. One thing I will say this, and just bring in the comics one more time. In Operation Zero Tolerance, Bastion did capture Professor Xavier, and Bastion got access to his files. Now, Travis, this might sound familiar to you. He got access to his files, and Bastion got his contingency plans for how to take down his team if they ever went rogue, no pun intended. Who does that sound like there?
Wonder where Professor X got that idea.
Mm-hmm. Power Battle.
So, for those of you who know, check out a storyline from DC Comics called JLA: The Tower of Babel.
And check it out. It's good.
There's also
It's
an
good.
animated film based on that comic as well.
Yes, so definitely check that out. Anyways, we see Bastion as we start getting ready for the operation to go into full effect. We see Bastion being held up by wires, very Christ-like. And he can sense the gold team coming in and launches his attack at Cable, Storm, Forge, Morph, and Jean. Now, Morph was kind of interesting. Morph's kind of wearing a little bit of the Age of Apocalypse kind of costume with the kind of the big shoulder pads and everything.
Yeah, well, we only see it in him wearing it for a couple minutes before he morphs into something much cooler.
Yes. Eventually, Storm tells them that Forge and her will distract them, and the rest of the team needs to get on the ground to take the fight there. Storm says to Jean that the Phoenix has inspired her in resurrecting, and how Jean has come back. And I can't remember the line they said, like, let them feel your weather and let them weather your mind. I can't remember. It was kind of a cool back and forth.
Jean said, make them mind your weather, and Storm said, and then weather your mind.
Yeah.
Yep. So the team on the ground comes upon a creepy kind of Nuketown-esque setup, and a big fight ensues with Morph turning into the Hulk, saying, Morph smash.
Yes.
This was awesome. And that town looks like
awesome.
Baston's childhood town.
Yep.
It was awesome, but it was funny. But Beast is the one who gave me the biggest laugh during that.
Oh yeah. What is
well,
one hand
he
sound?
rips off a hand, and then he says, "What's the sound of one hand clapping?" and hits the same Sentinel back with his own hand. I was cracking up.
Yep, and that Sentinel's head goes right into a diner that says DeMayo's Diner. So
Also, we missed it too when Jubilee burns up Roberto's card. It says Claremont.
Claremont. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Forgot about that too.
Yep, they did have that. Gotta love those tips of the hat. So then Sinister shows up on the ground and turns the battle to the fight with Jean Grey. It's getting personal, and he even at one point offers to tell her when he switched them. And Jean kind of says, like, he's trying to poke her left and right, trying to get at her, get under her skin. He's able to really kind of turn the tide at one point, but then Jean basically says that, kind of still making us think that Madeline Pryor is dead. She's saying, Madeline and I are now one. You can't, we're going after you. It almost like she's, I don't care when you took it. So I'll ask this question again. Do you think that either one of you, do you think we're ever going to find out when they were Sinister took her and switched them out?
Yes, eventually we will.
Yeah, probably, but not this season.
No.
I don't think we find out next week. I think that's a season 2 thing.
I do. I agree with you, Brent. And I also want to say this 5 seasons and this season, this is the best Sinister's ever looked in action and in terms of just being in a scene. This was the best scene he's been in easily in 5 seasons plus.
It was a great fight scene.
He moves so good too, just compared to the X-Men the animated series where you could barely move him around and he just gets shot all the time and rebuild more than fight. This was way better showcase of his powers.
It's a way better showcase of his powers because he would always use the Nasty Boys to do all the work at that point. You really didn't get to see him in his full kind of ability of the geneticist that has taken all the abilities that he has learned to combine with his own to make himself like the superior mutant in his mind. So then the blue team arrives on asteroid M. Rogue and Sunspotter are there to greet them, and they find no one in there because they've been teleported out by Nightcrawler. And we see Magneto on this amazing that throne made out of the Sentinel who destroyed Genosha. I mean, go figure. We see Charles trying to reason with Magneto to no avail. And he basically tells him at one point, I get to say the 2 words I've been wanting to do. And probably a lot of us feel in this episode. He tells Charles as he hits him with a metal clasp across his mouth, shut up. I can't say I disagree with Magneto at that point.
I thought he was going to give him the middle finger, to be honest with you.
I mean, it's hard to argue with that.
It's hard to argue with Magneto until a little bit later.
Mm-hmm. So, Roberto and Jubilee go at it, fight it, and then Roberto, as usual, as expected, wusses out, and Jubilee kind of takes him to task at that point. I was just kind of hoping that Jubilee was going to start displaying some of her more advanced powers that we kind of saw her older self or her like kind of future kind of S self in Mojoverse. So
Thank you for bringing it up because I will be disappointed if she does not do some of that before this season ends because that will make a greater point for that episode. If she learned the techniques from her future self in that game and uses them. Now, you can do it next season, that, and yes, your future, but it would work so much better if you do it at least in the final. I wanted to see it there too, Chris, but in the final episode, at the very least, I'd like to see it.
I'd accept it if it was next season just because we know that's already happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Wolverine then tries to attack Magneto and stopped by Rogue, saying, "You look like you're going for the kill shot at." Yep, he is. He's trying to take him down permanently.
He mentions that before they go too. Something like
that.
Yeah.
He sometimes he says you just got to take it down. Now Professor X tells the team that they need to get Magneto's helmet off so he can take control of Magneto with his powers to reverse the damage he's done to Earth. We then head back to the gold team. Mr. Sinister's going to tell Bastion that the X-Men are in the base and that they need to get out of there, but Bastion sees through it very quickly, blasts him to reveal it was Morph portraying him, saying that Sinister would never risk his life to help others, and he is not wrong in that. Sinister would just bolt and save himself.
He'd be gone about 20 minutes ago if that was the case.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like, come on, Morph, you stayed how long with him? You should know this.
All this experiments on you, come on, man.
Yeah. So the team then arrives. They try to put the collar on him, not successfully at that point. Sinister and Jean are still fighting outside, and then all of a sudden she is ambushed by Cable, who Sinister is controlling. You see the little red diamond in there, and saying his mother was the most powerful telepath, and that is passed down. Now, again, I've said this when we talked about Cable when he came back into the show, that Cable is technically an Omega-level mutant because his telekinetic powers are as powerful because, again, he is the son of Madeline Pryor and Scott Summers. But the problem is that he doesn't get to display his telekinetic powers because most of it is being used to keep the techno-organic virus at bay. When he has done this in the comics, the techno-organic virus has started to retaking over at that point. So it'll be very interesting to see with his display of his powers and his use of them, what the consequences of that are going to be for him and if he is going to survive this.
That red crystal was on Cable the entire time, right? Like it didn't just come out. So.
Yeah, that because it was also on Madeline when she turned as well.
That's a little point of contention for me, guys. Did you not look and see like, Sinister controlled Madeline with that? Maybe we should look and see. We're just gonna go blindly. Cable's got that. Okay, cool.
Yes and no at that point, just because you're not wrong, but it's one of those things that you would think in the future that anything like that would have been taken out or something like that. It's definitely very much through. In a recent storyline in the Krakoan era called The Sins of Sinister. I'm not going to reveal it because it is a pretty freaky thing that Sinister does during that arc that really turns everyone back against the mutants. So I like that, just saying, we're going down this path. So he opens up basically fighting Jean and trying to really have a huge display of power. So back at Asteroid M, we see the fight continuing, and Wolverine is able to get the helmet off. Professor Xavier takes control of Magneto, only to be stopped by freaking Cyclops. Who blasts him because he sees a vision of what's going down with the Gold Team, with Jean getting basically, I'm sorry, but Cable is basically going, and I know a little bit about Dragon Ball Z, so I know, Travis, you've seen it at that point. He basically goes full Dragon Ball Z on him at that point and ignites all the powers of Jean. It's making us think that Jean's been taken out. Jean hasn't been taken out. I'm sorry. I'm not believing that for a second.
Christine is dropping the knowledge in the chat of what might happen.
Yeah, so hold on, Christine. We'll get to that in a second. So it is where... He says, we got to give Gold Team more that you blast Magneto. I'm sorry, David.
He blasted Xavier.
Blasted Xavier. Sorry.
He blasted Xavier.
They blasted Xavier saying Gold Team needs more time. I'm sorry. David, everyone else, you cannot convince me otherwise at this one. Cyclops was so wrong at this point. I knew what they were leading towards at that point, but man, as soon as I say, he says Gold Team, I'll take you out, man. You are as much of a betrayer as Rogue was.
We talked about Cyclops being our other choice to potentially betray. our second option. We thought
Yeah.
Rogue was most likely,
Yep.
followed by Cyclops. I agree. Cyclops did it, committing blasphemy here. Absolute blasphemy. Cyclops was wrong to do this. He was absolutely wrong
Yep.
to do this. This was horrible. They had Magneto. They had him.
Yes,
and he blew it. He blew it.
Like I said before, when we had a pre-conversation about this, that was pretty fun, listeners.
He's choosing violence.
No, it's not. No,
don't
I'm not.
do it.
I'm not going there.
Don't get
Brett,
me
worry.
started again.
No, I'm not going there. I would be able to. I agree with both you guys. Cyclops is terribly wrong here, and it's hard. You can't get on board. Now, if in the pre-meeting when they were talking about the plan, they said that the Prime Sentinels will activate the moment we reverse the effects that Magneto has done on the Earth. Then I'm Team Cyclops because the Gold Team isn't getting the job done yet. If those Prime Sentinels activate, they are screwed. They're all going to go there. They're screwed. So I would be, but that was not said once. I don't. That can't be fact. I can't assume that they didn't tell me because they're going into the final battle. So Cyclops was wrong. Move over, Star-Lord. We have a new big dum dum for decision.
Now, I'll hold off on where I think some of the ramifications of this are going to be of Cyclops' actions, but let me get to Christine's comment because
they had two potential world-ending threats.
Yep.
The immediate threat of the Magneto side, the longer form but still world-threatening of Bastions. They had to stop Magneto first, and Cyclops screwed it up. All right, tell us about Christine's comment.
So, Christine, I thank you for putting this because this is great because I fully agree with what you're proposing out here. So, Christine Bentley in the chat saying, I think Phoenix is going to show up next week, and it'll have some Madeline relevance, especially after that battle with Cable. Too many Phoenix references, homages throughout the season. Not only that, Christine, they have kept for the last couple of episodes that scene where Phoenix comes up and Cyclops is there. They everything they have done, every little hint, every little part, they have done for a reason and a purpose. They are very careful. Bo DeMeo and his team that he had over there was very careful with. I think you are exactly right. I think that is a great theory. I'm with you on that, Christine. Excellent idea.
I will say too that I do think they could pivot here if they do the Phoenix Force and have this be the main reason that we get the Avengers versus X-Men, is that this Phoenix Force that can't exist. They can't have Jean running wild with this force, even if she controls it here. And that might be what, instead of using the hope of it all, I think you could change it and have it set up this way. Maybe not do it next season, maybe do it in season 3. But I do think you could start laying the breadcrumbs with a couple Phoenix appearances. Maybe she could lose control at the end of season 2, and that's what sets up the Avengers versus X-Men. We've gotten a lot of breadcrumbs now. We've gotten the Hulk, we've gotten Captain America, we've gotten Spider-Man, we've got Stark Industries multiple times. We've got the Hulk base as well, the Hulkbuster base. So I do think that there is a possibility for that.
Yep, Christine's saying DeMeo has stated several times that Jean is his favorite, and I think it'll bring in X-Men versus Avengers. Yep, that's been out there for a lot.
I would not be disappointed at all.
Nope.
I see you, Christine. I see you.
Yep. David not liking necessarily my blasphemy, but saying had Xavier not been on his BS, Scott wouldn't have had to make such a choice. Cyclops out here doing what's right for no. Cyclops is doing what's right for what he thinks is Jean. It has nothing. He is more worried about Jean than anyone else has always been. He's consistent. I will give you that. Like when it comes down to you put Jean in the thread, he will choose. That is where he is not the best team leader. Now, this is where I think this is where it's going to head before we get to kind of the end of what we all want to get to. This is where I think the consequence of this is going to be. This will not be forgotten of what Scott did at that moment. However it ends up, wherever the pieces lie, that the X-Men will be forever fractured by this. Scott will probably leave the team or lose his position of leadership. Storm will become the new official leader of the X-Men, as it should be at this point.
Oh, that's 100% happening. They're positioning that. I don't think we'll get the Storm defeating Cyclops in battle to take over.
I think he either is forced out or is going to leave the team because of his actions.
And I laughed because you said in pieces, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But
I was thinking earlier today about how in the comics the original 5 left the team, and they after Giant Size X-Men 1 they left the team and they reformed together as X Factor. obviously we already have X Factor here, but I could absolutely see Cyclops being pushed out one way or the other, or maybe even voluntarily leaving, saying, I screwed up. I put the role at jeopardy because of was trying to save.
Yep.
To save. That's the cover I was exactly thinking of. Travis, thank you very much. And
also coming into omnibus form later this year.
And yeah, I mean that. I don't necessarily think it'll go that way unless there's 2 or 3 other people that agree with Cyclops. But it'd be interesting, we've speculated where they break up into different teams. It'd be interesting if Cyclops was one of them who broke from the X-Men to do something different.
Yeah, I can see that happening. Sorry, Chris, and Rogue moving from Magneto's radical position to a more like not total line, but cross the line a bit position of Scott after this event of this season.
Yeah. So Magneto then puts, basically has that moment, gets the helmet back, but puts it on Professor Xavier to stop his powers. And at that moment, Wolverine stabs him through his chest to kill him. And he says, "Bub, I've been in a lot of wars, Bub." He said, "Been in a lot of wars, Bub, and the brave always die first." This is a callback to what Magneto said to them as the Blackbird was flying away in the episode The Final Decision, as they sped off to take down Master Mold. So, and again, Wolverine has seen from time to time what Magneto is trying to do. He doesn't necessarily always agree with his methods, but he has many times seen eye to eye with him. And I will say this, and I've said this many times in different shows that I've been on and say this, I have never been the biggest fan, like anime style, I've not been the biggest fan of. It's just so far not my tempo. This show has a lot of anime elements that I'm willing to start dipping my toe into it, because this kind of sequence right here is very much anime style and the most blood we have seen in the show. This series and the animation style, the blending anime with kind of the originals is giving me a lot to think about, of kind of dipping my toes back into watching things like Akira and Ghost in the Shell, things like that. But seeing kind of like the him stabbing him through, and then I was like, oh, here we go. And Magneto gets that second wind, saying, fine, he's going to bring this feud to an end, forcibly retracts Wolverine's claws, throws him back, and then rips out his adamantium, and we get left with the final scene, which is one of the most famous panels in X-Men history, of the ripping of the adamantium from Wolverine. I remember reading that comic as a kid. I have every single issue of Fatal Attractions in single issue. I have the oversized hardcover of the series. It is one of my favorite X-Men events of all time. But that sequence, that panel, was just jarring as much as for all X-Men fans. Like, it is got to be top 10 on pretty much everyone's list of that moment. And they were able to recapture it here in animation. Just, oh my gosh.
They nailed this. And Chris, I love that they basically ended this episode on a panel, like a comic panel, completely. And I hope they do that more going forward. That's stuff that I loved when they do it in like video games and that too, when they put in full-on comic panels. Shout out Spider-Man, Venom, Maximum Carnage for that back in the Super Nintendo. Yep. I love that kind of stuff, and this was fantastic here. Wolverine, if you were in so many wars, did you learn not to give monologues when you could finish off your villain? Because if you didn't do that little monologue, you could have done what you were doing to the Prime Sentinels, which is rip them in half and be done. But no, you had to do a little monologue that cost you your adamantium. I love this. This was one of the best scenes of the entire season.
If you had asked me, were we going to see a version of this on the show prior to the show starting, I would have said no. They're not going to go that dark. They're not going to go that bloody, that gory. And I mean, this was one of the bloodiest scenes that Marvel Studios has put out. This was one of the goriest scenes Marvel Studios has put out. And I am really, really glad that they did, because this show has a very rich history of pulling from famous comic book arcs. And like you said, Chris, this is one of the most, Fatal Attractions is one of the most iconic X-Men arcs. This is absolutely one of the most iconic probably not just panels of X-Men, but of all of Marvel Comics. Like this is one
Yeah.
of the big ones for sure. So it's really cool to see that they did this.
And to Brent's point about the darkest too, I think the darkest thing I've seen in X-Men in live action or animation to this was when Magneto in Days of Future Past put the rebar in Wolverine and sent him in the ocean. I think
Mhm.
that's not even close to this. Like there's no blood in that or anything. Like
Right.
this is fantastic. This is again, and it's this animation. You can't do that. You can't do that in the animation style of X-Men, the animated series, and make it look this good. That's the other thing I want to say.
Yeah, Christine Bentley in the chat saying there was a brief glimpse of Polaris, very old, maintaining the Earth's magnetic field in the future, and Bastion commenting too little, too late at Magneto's escape. Was all this meant to happen? Yeah, we had talked about that last week. You know, kind of hinting towards what was she was obviously trying to correct something or trying to do something. So no, I think it kind of goes in what I proposed earlier, that Bastion letting Magneto escape, you know, at that point to kind of further his plan. Like this is all about, like I had put out there too last week that Professor X is the wild card on the board that could possibly ruin Bastion's plan. That if when Professor Xavier comes back, that is the wild card that Bastion needs to remove.
And I want to say that I'm not sure. Looking at it a little scientifically, because I did look up what would happen to the Earth if it lost its magnetic
Oh,
field.
you did homework. Good for you.
And because I'm like Bastion, if he let him go, like he's really rolling the dice. Because literally, it doesn't matter if you're a mutant or not. Like the Earth's ozone layer will float away, and you will literally be burned alive. So
Well, that's fun.
I don't think it like would save anybody. Maybe Bastion because he's a machine. I'm not sure. Maybe he could survive that, and the Prime Sentinel people could survive that, and maybe that's what Polaris was doing in the future, was repairing it. I don't know, but again, I thought about that as well because it's a big roll of the dice to think that either Magneto will be stopped or you can stop these events in the hour, because we didn't know it was an hour until this episode.
You know, it does make you wonder. Because and Christine's right, and I thank you, Christine. I had forgotten about that glimpse of Polaris. Why did nobody call her? Why didn't Forge call her? Right, like somebody probably should have picked up a phone, used some telepathy, whatever, used Cerebro, and
like
say, "Hey,
it's like the MCU problem. Like, where are all these people?
It is kind of. It's like, but like this show has been so deliberate about like nothing just being there just to be there. Everything has had a point.
Forge, call in X Factor for the love of God! Like all hands are on deck here. Like
Yeah.
you know, we could have used a couple extra people on each team. You might have got the job done
Sure.
both sides.
And it's like if they, and she may not have been able to completely reverse. I mean, she's never been depicted as being as powerful as Magneto is, but she might have been able to like slow the effects to buy more time. To say, buy enough time for Gold Team to stop Bastion in a way that didn't involve having to take out stop Magneto. Like that may have been able to happen. Maybe Xavier could have held Magneto longer for them Gold Team to have an opportunity if Polaris was there. Like it's not a plot hole. The plot works without it. It's just a question that I'm asking because I'd frankly forgot that she was in that scene, and this show hasn't been known for wasting things.
Yeah.
Scott assembled the teams, right, for this mission.
I mean, he just said like, "You're gonna go with Blue Team, you're gonna go with Gold Team, or whatever, something like that."
He absolutely hates Logan Wolverine. Like, who when you're a leader and you're laying out.
Originally, he was on Gold.
Like, send them. Don't send them to the guy that can control
Wolverine
metal.
was?
I could have sworn at one point he was on Gold.
I'm not going to say he's never worked with him, but he was in
the comics he was always.
My
Blue.
memories, he was a member of the Blue Team.
Yeah. No, I'm saying like in the show, I think at one point he was. Professor X put him on Gold Team originally.
They've never done Blue and Gold teams.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying in this episode when the teams were put in place, Professor X.
So when Rogue and Sunspot leave, they switch. Okay.
Yes, that's the.
Xavier's the one who split them up.
Yes, Xavier's the one who put the people on the teams at that point, and that was before Rogue.
Okay.
And
that's why I asked, because I wasn't sure here.
Because I found that interesting. I said, oh, he's on the Gold Team, so he's not going with Magneto, so we may not be getting this. But when Rogue and Sunspot leave, he goes onto the
Okay,
blue
yep,
team,
yep,
which
yep.
I'm with you. Yes, why are you putting the man who obviously has it? Now, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, I could have sworn that when the original team was put out there in this episode, I talk about comics, but saying Wolverine was on Gold Team originally for this mission.
I feel like I'm brain farting. Granted, an exhausting week, but I feel like I'm
Yeah.
brain farting right now on Xavier even picking the teams.
That's why I asked, Brett, because
Okay.
I couldn't remember Cyclops actually. I know he was sitting there talking to Cable, but I could not actually remember him saying like "your blue team, your red." So yeah, I do remember now Professor X saying that. And again, that's not smart. I don't understand. You could have switched more for Wolverine, and Wolverine could have been on the other team. I'll put in my application next week for leader of the X-Men because I can clearly be a much better leader. Or Professor X, I'll take his job because I won't go out in the field fight. I don't have any mutant powers, but I can definitely move the chessboard around a lot better than what's being done here.
Chris, you remember at what point Xavier said who was on
I'm
what
trying
team?
I'm trying to scrub right now. So,
So
while I'm scrubbing at that point, what are y'all kind of predictions for next week?
I'm thinking Onslaught is going to be teased. I think he's going to be teased at the back of Professor X's mind. I think that they're going to deal with the task at hand first, but I do think Onslaught will be the villain for next season. I think that they are going to use time travel to take him down because that is something we haven't seen yet this season used to stop. We've only seen it failed a couple times, and this point here is not. We didn't see the Watcher when these events occurred. So this is not a fixed point in time. So I do think they can use some sort of time travel. We haven't seen Bishop yet. He may come back. And if you're...
The Watcher doesn't show up only at fixed points in time.
No, but he watches... he observes.
watches-
He's only seen observed one point, and in that point in time, Cable cannot change anything ever. He keeps getting pulled back out. So that's why I'm just...
That particular point happened to be it. But the Watcher shows up when it's moments of like immense universal importance. And that's when doesn't have anything to do with a fixed point in time. I think that's more of a coincidence.
I don't think it's a coincidence at all that he was checking that out.
Well,
there.
look in the What If episode. Everything that he's in there, those aren't fixed points in time.
The one with Doctor Strange is. That was the whole point
Absolutely,
of
it
that
is. But
episode.
what about the rest of the episodes?
Yeah, I could very much be wrong at that point. I'm not seeing it. I just Rogue. Was
I don't
going-
remember Professor
Yeah.
X stating the teams. Just Cyclops said,
Yeah,
"Blue team go here, gold team go
Yeah.
here,"
Okay,
and
Cyclops hates Wolverine.
yeah.
but
Cyclops
at least in the comics they were on the same team.
Oh yeah. No, I know that Wolverine was always going to be on blue team in the comics.
Beast was on blue team also, but
Yes.
I think he frequently went back and forth depending on the
so
mission.
my mistake on that one. Maybe it was more like Rogue was going to be going with Cyclops to blue team. So
Mhm.
so anyways, yeah. Predictions, like I said, I think we're going to get a lot of a lot of hints towards where I don't think everything's going to be resolved. I think there's going to be a lot of things still left on the table, which is fine. I'm good with that, but there's a lot of interesting ideas of where they can head with this. So,
And yeah, I'm really interested. And if you got to do homework and you don't want to watch Star Trek, you can watch a season 8 episode of Arrow, a season 4 episode of Flash, a season 3 episode of Legends to get the exact same effect that you will get for this season 5 episode 18 episode of Star Trek.
yep. So, Cause and Effect is the episode title, as Christine's saying. Star Trek Next Generation, Season 5, Episode 18. So, I will be watching that because I'm a Star Trek fan, and I'm always
I watched
down
it.
for.
I watched it. So yeah.
So, be looking for it. Again, dropping those hints. That's the extra credit homework for this week. So, but all right. So, at season finale, DeMeo says again, it's going to say "Hold my beer" to everything else. So I'm excited. I'm scared at the same time, but man, it's been a wild ride so far, gentlemen.
I'm very, very excited for it.
So
I've been loving it. Thank you guys for having me for
Yeah,
these
sure.
episodes.
absolutely, we'll see you next week.
See you next week, boys. See you, listeners.
Bye.
All right, so we're gonna take probably our last ad break before we get into news and looking at everything else. So, listeners, as you know, these ads help keep the lights on in Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on, and they could be a bit loud. Give that 3 count before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. All right, Brent, we actually have some news this week that basically broke today. It was back and forth, and it's all revolving around Fantastic Four. So we're going to start off with kind of the slightly bigger news, because of who it's finally, there's been a lot of back and forth of who is playing Galactus. We've heard a lot of names tossed around, a lot of rumors. Well, finally, the Hollywood Reporter has the exclusive. Again, they're claiming it's exclusive. Marvel Studios has not officially confirmed this, but they are saying their sources have told them that Ralph Ineson is in talks, more than likely final talks. He is a British actor whose 3-decade career ranges from Harry Potter to the recent horror prequel, The First Omen, is in final talks to play Galactus in Marvel Studios' The Fantastic Four. And, that draws a growing list of big names, including Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, Invisible Woman, Joseph Quinn as her hot-headed brother, Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, and Eben Moss-Baccarin as Richard's best friend, Ben Grimm, the ever-loving blue-eyed thing. So, Innocent is said to be playing Galactus, the intergalactic being who eats the life of force planets, and has now just picked the wrong planet to chow down on. So, I've, as soon as I saw the actor at that point and remembered where it's from, I said, oh, absolutely. The voice and everything, it's going to be very interesting to see. I mean, we've talked about it before, Galactus being finally portrayed accurately. We just go to the Eternals and say, yeah, we had Celestials. Of course we can have Galactus.
I saw this, again, like I said earlier, when I looked at the show notes right before getting on. It's been that kind of week. And I just thought, good. I don't want another Fantastic Four. Who is casting them and us keep getting another name every other week. Just good. Just get him in there. I don't know him from a ton of stuff. I've seen some stuff he's been in, but I trust Marvel's casting process, so that's fine. Put him in there.
Yep. So we got that news today, and before that news had dropped, Deadline had put out their own story that they're exclusive, that their sources have now told them that John Malkovich has been cast in the Fantastic role in an unnamed part right now. So that's gonna be interesting. I joked around saying, "Oh, he could be Mole Man. Let's put him as the Mole Man."
See, that's Paul Walter as a Husser. Like
That's
seen
the
people,
other casting.
I've seen people say he has been he's being
Yeah.
people are wondering about Mole Man. For John Malkovich, I thought of a different part.
Yeah, go for it.
I thought of the Puppet Master.
Yeah, I could see
Maybe
that.
that's a little close there, but
Alicia Master's father, I believe.
Yep, visually, looks kind of like him. So I definitely thought, that's who I first thought of when I was trying to think of characters for him to play.
Yeah, I was just playing joking, but yeah, Paul Walter Heston, that's been the rumor that he has now joined the cast as well, and another unknown part. But yeah, I could definitely see him as the Mole Man at that point. Some people have said that maybe he's the voice of Herbie because he's got a comedic background. But yeah, John Malkovich joining it, yeah, that's going to be very interesting. In our GUA chat, Clay had put out there that maybe he's the very famous mailman that delivers to the Baxter Building every day. So,
okay.
So I did appreciate that. So yeah, that's not a bad pull there, Clay. So, but it's going to be interesting. Julio in the chat saying the big bad villain of F4. So,
maybe, I guess, but I would have put that to Galactus. But Galactus could be introduced while someone else is the big bad of the movie.
Yep. So Fantastic Four, I mean, they're supposed to be getting ready to start shooting. What is it, this summer?
I mean, it's got to be soon, right?
Yeah, it has to be if they're planning to release next summer, competing against Superman.
Yeah.
So, all right. So that's our first news in a couple of weeks that we felt necessary to talk about. So let us head into listener feedback, fact or fictions, and comic book club. So we did have a couple of, David and who else had put something out there as well.
David did, but you said it was close to one of your fact or fiction, so we're basically punting on David. Sorry, David. Omari put one in, but we're going to talk about that in our credit scene. Yep. But one that will go right nicely right here from Anthony. Mm-hmm. Who was more right, Cyclops or Magneto?
Magneto.
In this episode, I have to give it to Magneto. I mean, in general, I'm still going to say Cyclops was right, but this time, Magneto.
He's so wrong. He's
so wrong.
So wrong. So many ways. First to David in the chat saying first to Cyclopsander, now this. Absolutely. Yours, it's going to be answered. Your question delves into my factor fiction. So just hold on. Patience. So yeah, absolutely Magneto. So, but yeah, we'll talk about the rest of you all as we get into this. So let us get into factor fictions from last week. Brent, these were yours. So let me pull those up. Number 1, after the success of X-Men 97, another show from the same universe will be brought back. 53% said fact, 47% said fiction, so a little close on that one. So some people are still almost 50-50 on that. Number 2, this Spider-Man will appear in an episode of X-Men 97 Season 2 with a speaking part. 80% said fact, 20% said fiction. And number 3, Bishop will appear again before the end of Season 1 of X-Men 97. 79% said fact, 21% said fiction.
Well, guess we'll find out in a week on that last one.
Yep, we will find out. So, all right. So starting off, with how we ended this episode with Wolverine's adamantium being ripped out from him. So based on the fallout from this episode, and more than likely even more of the fallout coming in from the finale, we will see X-Men 97 Season 2 do an episode adapting the Origin miniseries.
I kid you not. Fact. I literally have that one written down for next week.
Wow, that's a first for us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've ever had one that one of us has gotten from someone.
Yep. Season 2 of X-Men 97 will have an episode telling a version of the Wolverine Origin miniseries. It's in my notes for next week. I'm going to go ahead and erase that out of my notes. I think it's going to happen. I think they're set up perfectly for it. And I know that miniseries was a little divisive from a standpoint of, was Wolverine a more interesting character not knowing his history? There's an argument there.
Yep, there is.
But I kind of like knowing his history, and we do know, we effectively know it now. I wouldn't mind seeing the X-Men 97 version of it.
Yeah. So as soon as I saw that, so all right, I'm writing that down because I think that's where we're headed as well. So I'm a fact. This one, to David's point, this is what I had written down before I even saw his question come through. Due to the actions and consequences of Professor Xavier this season, we will see an incarnation of Onslaught in a future season of X-Men 97. Now,
there's been a lot of people talking about this.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, who hear this thing called Onslaught, what is it at that point? It looks a lot like a souped-up Magneto. Well, kind of. So Professor X, if possibly this happening in the next episode, but in the comics, pretty much immediately after what Magneto does to Wolverine happens. In the comics, if you don't want to know, skip ahead like 15, 20 seconds. Professor X blasts Magneto, taking all the dark parts of his mind, basically mind-wiping Magneto. And because of that, because of the kind of the anger he took on, because of the actions he took, Professor Xavier's conscience kind of went down a very dark path. And through that, his conscience has created a new supervillain called Onslaught, which is the melding of Magneto's and Professor X's consciences together to create this kind of super villain of all time. And so, I know I'm not the only one thinking this. Yeah, I think we might be heading towards not a storyline I really enjoyed in the comics and X-Men history, but I could see X-Men 97 probably giving us a version of this that I could actually say, all right, that wasn't bad.
Yeah, it doesn't have the greatest reputation. I mean, it's not like Clone Saga's reputation, but it's closer to that than it is some others. But I think it's a fact. I think they're going that direction. It just feels like there's some smoke there.
Yeah, so I agree with you, Dave. I think we are heading towards an Onslaught as well. It would be, if we're not, I'm not going to be disappointed because again, I'm not a huge fan of the character nor the storyline. But yeah, I'm with this idea. I think there's a lot of smoke towards this. All right, so this is one I started thinking about at the end of last week, and so here we go. In an upcoming season of X-Men 97, we will see an X-Men join Apocalypse as their new Horseman. And I have two theories on this. One is based on, just a very quick thing that nothing's done without purpose in this show. One of them, we see the resurrection of Gambit as the new comic accurate. At that point, he did become a new Horseman of Death. And the only reason I point that out is because we see, Gambit in that vision that Professor X has go quickly skeleton at that point. So could be, hinting at that. Or we get also comic accurate Wolverine as the new Horseman of Death for Apocalypse in order to get back his adamantium, because that's what happened.
I think both are plausible.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's tough.
Yeah, that's why I just said an X-Men, so I leave it open at that point. But those are my two
I'm going to go ahead and
possibilities.
say fact. I think I will say this. It would be a very good way to bring back Gambit without negating his death.
Correct.
I mean, he'd be alive, but it's not just time traveling wiping it away. But you're right. This was used to give him Wolverine his adamantium back, and we assume he will get the adamantium back at some point.
Yep.
But maybe he won't. Maybe he'll just have the bone claws. So.
Yep. So
regardless,
we'll
you said in X-Man, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a fact.
Yep. So I'm a fact as well. So, all right. So I will post those on Sunday afternoon, so let your voices be heard. And Brent, let's head to Comic Book Club. Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe #3. Interesting enough, this is very much X-Men focused.
It is, and it opens up with Taskmaster looking for him, but the real main start to this is Deadpool has Xavier tied to a chair, and he's just goading him in, saying, "All right, come on, take a look at me." And the entire time they're like, we know that Deadpool breaks the fourth wall, and they mentioned breaking the fourth wall.
Yep.
It's like in this, he's trying to tell Professor Xavier, and you think Xavier gets a glimpse of he knows they're comic book characters. Mm-hmm. And he's like, we're not really going to feel this. It's not going to hurt or whatever.
Yeah.
And it just, I really enjoyed this opening scene, and he makes Xavier say, "To me, my X-Men," about the only time this hasn't been a great, at least the only time I'm remembering, a really cavalry inspiring bring in the troops moment, and it's Deadpool's killing them all.
Yeah, putting this bubble around Cyclops' head, and that basically when he uses optic blast, not only blows his own head off, but kills the rest of the people around him, including Emma Frost. This is like a horror fun house at that point, that they're all putting in all these death traps.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, he manages to take down Colossus and Rogue with walls closing in on themselves. And sure, Gambit's there, but that's not his strength isn't going to help him there. But he does it with electrocuting them and stuff.
Yeah, and basically how he takes down Professor Xavier is when he tries to shut down his mind and basically kind of kills him. Mm-hmm. Brain death, as he called it.
Yeah, I mean, the job is done. He also takes out Magneto. He doesn't technically kill Kitty Pryde, but he traps her in a infinite cube prism thing where she's just always phasing through the walls and can never get out. He says that's close enough.
Yeah, then we get Wolverine, who we thought he had wiped out at that big explosion, because all we saw it was a skeleton left. And somehow he was able to repurpose himself, so he stumbles upon Arcade, and looks like this is where Deadpool got this horror funhouse from Arcade. But then he sees the bait that was laid, the trap that was laid by him, where Deadpool has taken X-23, Laura Kinney, and his son Dakin, and basically barely keeping them alive to try to get him to save him. And my goodness, Deadpool, he's wearing the pelt of Beast.
I mean, yeah. And I love what he says to he's wearing it is ridiculous that he's wearing that. I love what he says to Wolverine when he says, "Your tendency to come back from the brink of death has nothing to do with your healing factor. Your mutant power isn't regeneration, it's popularity."
Yep.
Yeah, so true.
Yep.
So true.
Yep, it is. And he's able to take him down because of the sword he's wielding at that point, and basically chops off his head, takes him down, and we see Taskmaster at the Sanctum Sanctorum looking for more, and seeing that Deadpool's already been there. He's taken out Wong, he's taken out Doctor Strange, and he kind of sees the book that he's looking at, and he's marked it in blood, and they opened up the page of the book saying the nexus of all realities, and Taskmaster said, "Oh, this can't be good."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Deadpool says, "Oh, this can't be good." And Taskmaster said, "Oh, this can't be good." And Deadpool says, "Oh, this can't be good." And Taskmaster said, "Oh, this can't be good." And Deadpool says, "Oh, this can't be good." And Taskmaster said, "Oh, this can't be good." And Deadpool says, "Oh, this can't be good." And Taskmaster said, "Oh, this can't be good." And Taskmaster said, "Oh, this can't be good." And Deadpool said, "Oh, this can't be good." And Taskmaster 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 said, "Oh, this can't be good." So we get the final issue next week of this miniseries, and Brent and I have decided that we will read the follow up to this is the Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe again.
I'm enjoying it. So
Yeah.
I'm curious about what they do for the second round. So
Yep.
and,
So we're gonna continue on. We'll wrap up next week the official first arc of this, and then we'll read the sequel right after that at that point, and then we will figure out what you all the fans will get to choose for us. So all right, Brent. So volume 214 in the books. Another great episode of X-Men 97. We're looking forward to next week. So tell people how they can follow you.
Brentak Prime on the socials. I have a feeling for the next week or two I won't be super active, but hopefully I'll get back on there soon.
This too shall pass.
Absolutely.
Yes, and as always, we want to thank our official sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com, for our omnibus hardcover collected edition needs. Use that code MARVELGUA at checkout to get $2 off every single order. You can follow me on all the socials at Chris Balga. You can follow this show on Twitter at Marvel A Podcast. You can follow my other show, World's Finest True Believers, at Finest Believers. You can email the show at marvelalliancepodcast@gmail.com. You can follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at GUA Network. Feel free to tweet, email if you want to provide feedback, ask questions. All our DMs are open. Brent, mine, the show account. Feel free to message us anywhere. We'll answer your question to get them on the show. Continue to rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. We greatly appreciate it. We want to thank you all for joining us live in the chat. Thank you all for listening. Stay safe out there, everyone. And as Stan the Man would say, Excelsior, true believers. All right, post-credits discussion. Empire Magazine, the cover story this week is looking at Deadpool and Wolverine, but they also had another story in there that got a little traction in the press entitled Marvel's Luis D'Esposito reflects on rough time at the studio. We're coming back strong. This is coming from the Empire Magazine, the upcoming issue that releases next week. And this ties into what who you said Amari Daniels was asking?
Yes, Amari Daniels.
Okay. So we'll get him as we're going to go through a few points here. So starts off by saying Luis D'Esposito said it's been a rough time. He's the co-president of Marvel Studios. He said, however, he sees Wade Wilson's mutant team up as the sign of things that are getting back on the right path. He said, if we just stay on top, that would have been the worst thing that could have happened to us. We took a little hit. We're coming back strong. And that less is more ethos is going to continue. He said, maybe when you do too much, you dilute yourself a little bit. We're not going to do that anymore. We've learned our lesson, maybe 2 or 3 films a year, 1 or 2 shows, as opposed to doing 4 films and 4 shows. Marvel boss Kevin Feige also says that he's seeing the positive sign of the MCU being on the right foot again. After all, looking back at Phase 1, that's exactly where they began. He said, it's nice to be able to rally behind one feature project this year. I'm much more comfortable being the underdog. I prefer being able to surprise and exceed expectations. So it does seem like the last year, which has not been ideal, has been set up for us well. Even Sean Levy, the director of Deadpool and Wolverine, said, you have to be living under a rock not to know that the last few Marvel movies have failed to ignite the world the way so many have done. He said, we do come along at an interesting time. We are decidedly something different. Whether it is of messianic proportions, time will tell. In Deadpool, we trust. So, what was Amari's question?
So he said, with Iger's comments about Marvel's new release volume, how big a gap do we feel there should be between the projects? Which Iger had also reiterated the whole 3 movies, 2 shows thing.
Mm-hmm. Like just how much time span? I would say, like, I really think they just go 2 and 2. I get why they want to do 3 and 3, because you do one in the winter, you do one in the summer, you do one early spring, late winter, summer, and then late fall.
I mean they're looking at doing five projects throughout the year if they stick with 3 movies and 2. At this point, I would say go with 4 projects, and you could just do 1 a quarter, make it easy. Yep. But Yeah, you could spread things out just a little bit, squeeze things together. Maybe just a little bit might be a better way to phrase it, and slot in a fifth one. I hope they don't do more than that. But my big thing for the release volume is don't overlap it. Like there doesn't need it. And yes, I had a lot of fun with like I'm watching What If in the morning and I went to Shang-Chi at night, or I watched Loki and I went and saw I think it was Black Widow. It was a lot of fun when those happened, but it's just not necessary. Don't overlap them. And hey, for the record, on the Disney Plus side, don't overlap with Star Wars either.
Just stop that.
Like spread it out.
Yeah. I do want to push back on one comment from Kevin Feige, where he said like he said I'm much more comfortable being the underdog. I'm gonna push back a little bit, even despite them having the year they had last year with all the projects that's not picking up steam outside of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. The MCU still is not looked at the underdog. The DC Studios haven't even gotten off the ground at that point. So, yes, Marvel Studios has taken a few hits, as D'Esposito says, and we all know. I don't think anyone looks at Marvel Studios as the underdog currently.
The only way I could think to justify his comment, and I say this agreeing with you, is they've gotten a lot of critical grief. And maybe he means underdog from the standpoint of people think they've lost it.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's saying he personally is more comfortable being the underdog.
But I feel like to say that it's a reach, and I would have to agree with your assessment there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get what he's trying to go at, but I think it's just like, you've taken hits, a year plus of hits at that point. But, until DC Studios gets off the ground first with Creature Commandos later this year, and then Superman in 2025, it's, the jury's still out. And you're still looked at as, I wouldn't necessarily, I know our friend Travis Snow likes saying the gold standard at that point, but
the thing is, even when Superman comes out and is a absolute fantastic movie, let's say, and we both hope it is, right?
Yeah,
there's still it's going to take more than just one or two projects from DC for Marvel not to be considered the underdog. Like it's going to take some actual real time. Some of that was just, let's call it how it is. It's PR marketing spin, acknowledging that they haven't made the same amount of money they have in the past, and just, saying they're going to try again, try better. And I mean, hopefully they get there. And I'm feeling great about Deadpool and Wolverine this year. And, in a perfect world, we'll have an awesome Fantastic Four movie and an awesome Superman movie that both come out and both do great and what they need to do for their respective studios. And at that point, I don't care who the underdog is. I want them to both be as good as they can be.
Yeah. So just we'll see what happens. Again, we're all eyes are on Deadpool and Wolverine later this summer. So again, we'll have to see, but we will see you next week, Volume 215, the finale of X-Men 97 Season 1. We'll see you all next week. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.